Back in 2005, when I first saw Nerariyan CBI, I was awestruck by this exchange. It showed how brilliant Sethurama Iyer was. He could beat this Kapra guy in an intellectual debate about things that were beyond science. But now, when I look back at this, I'm like, what is the Pseudoscience doing in the CBI series? I mean, this movie has a scene where a Malayali Sherlock Holmes equates the phantom limb syndrome to the existence of ghosts. The most rational detective in Malayalam cinema history uses a neurological phenomenon to argue that souls are real.
കയ്യോ കാലോ മുറിച്ചു മാറ്റിയവരോട് ചോദിച്ചാൽ അവർ പറയും കുറെ കാലത്തേക്ക് ആ അവയവങ്ങൾ അവിടെ തന്നെ ഉള്ളതായി തോന്നിയിരുന്നു. അതിന് കാരണം ആ വാക്വം ഈ വൈറ്റൽ ബോഡി ഫിൽ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്.
What Sethurama Iyer is doing here is called false equivalence. Drawing an equivalence between two subjects because they share some superficial characteristics while ignoring the significant differences between them. The phantom limb syndrome, the neurological experience of amputees who feel a limb that no longer exists, is a well-documented fact of neuroscience and perception. It does not show that souls exist. They share the word feeling. That's it. To be fair to S. N. Swami, his research wasn't lazy. Phantom limb sensations have been recorded since at least the 16th century, and centuries later, Admiral Horatio Nelson took his own phantom arm as proof that the soul must exist. But this theory was demolished in V.S. Ramachandran's Phantoms in the Brain, published in 1998, which proved through experiments that phantom limb sensations are caused by cross-wirings in the brain, not persistence of a soul. Sethurama Iyer in 2005 is presenting 16th century thinking as though it was an established fact. And we are left thinking, but here's the thing, this didn't start with Nerariyan CBI. To understand what went wrong, we have to go back to where it all began. To understand how far the CBI series has fallen, we have to understand what it was. Sethurama Iyer is to Keralites what Sherlock Holmes is to English literature, what Byomkesh Bakshi is to Bengali fiction. I do not make this comparison casually. It is precisely the weight of what the character was supposed to carry, and very nearly did. The first two films, Oru CBI Diary and Jagratha, were textbook investigation thrillers. The police botch the case, CBI arrives, Sethurama Iyer and his team solve it using scientific and logical reasoning. Almost nothing in these films is decorative. Even the comedy feels organic. And they even made fun of pseudoscientific bullshit.
അതൊക്കെ പ്രിന്റ് ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞു സാർ. എങ്കിൽ മാറ്റി വെക്കേ, അടുത്ത ലക്കത്തിൽ കൊടുക്കാം, ജൂലൈ ലക്കത്തില്. ജൂൺ മാസത്തെ ജാതകഫലം അതെങ്ങനെ സാർ ജൂലൈയില്? അത് സാരമില്ലടോ, ജൂണും ജൂലൈ ഒക്കെ ഒന്ന് തന്നെയാ. സമയം നന്നായിരിക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ ജാതകഫലം?
That's the Sethurama Iyer of the first two films. A detective who used the dummy method to recreate a crime scene. Someone who used simple observation to realize that a person who was 5'5" was too short to hang themselves from a hook too high. No divine intervention, no phantom limbs, just science. That Sethurama Iyer was one of the best fictional detectives in Indian cinema. Jagratha came out in 1989 and Sethurama Iyer CBI was released in 2004. That is a gap of 15 years. And in those 15 years, Malayalam cinema became a completely different animal. By the early 2000s, the dominant commercial logic of Malayalam cinema demanded that every film be a family movie. Not in the sense of being family friendly, these films had always been watchable for families, but in the sense of having something for everyone in the family to hold on to. A love track, action sequences, comedy, sentiments, etc. If your film didn't have all of these, it wasn't considered commercially viable. K. Madhu and S. N. Swami returned to the CBI franchise after 15 years into this environment. And they did what most filmmakers in that environment did. They adjusted. Sethurama Iyer CBI has a love track between Vineet and Navya Nair that nobody asked for. A fight sequence that was totally out of place. And a subplot involving Sai Kumar's Satyadas that is entertaining but unnecessary. That's the first crack in the foundation. When you compare the Sethurama Iyer of the first two movies to the one in Sethurama Iyer CBI, it almost feels like the story happens in a parallel universe. We hear Sethurama Iyer repeatedly referring to divine intervention, and sometimes the dialogue itself shows the contradiction.
സാധാരണ മനുഷ്യരെക്കാൾ റാഷണലാണ് പോലീസുകാരൻ്റെ മനസ്സ്. അതിനെ കൂടെ കൺവിൻസ് ചെയ്യണം. എനിവേ, അവനെ പ്രേരിപ്പിച്ച് ദൈവം തന്നെ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു വഴി കാണിച്ചു തരട്ടെ.
Suddenly, this Sethurama Iyer seems a lot more religious than the one in the first two movies. And not religious in the way that the original Iyer was, where his Brahmin identity was present but never up and center like it is in CBI 3. There's also a fight sequence. The CBI series was always about Sethurama Iyer and team trumping the corrupt police using intellect. What is the CBI versus Kerala police brawl doing in this movie? And then comes the first time pseudoscience is peddled. The Almaram scene.
ഈ ആൽമരത്തിന്റെ പ്രത്യേകത എന്താണെന്നറിയാവോ ചാക്കോയ്ക്ക്?
ഇല്ല സർ.
ഈ ഭൂമിയിൽ ഏറ്റവും പരിശുദ്ധമായ വായു ലഭിക്കുന്നത് ഇതിന്റെ ചുവട്ടിലാണ്. അന്തരീക്ഷത്തിലെ ഓസോൺ ലെയറിന് തുല്യമാണിത്. ഓസോൺ ലെയറിൽ വിള്ളലുണ്ടാക്കി ഭൂമിയിലെത്തുന്ന അൾട്രാ വയലറ്റ് ഇൻഫ്രാറെഡ് രശ്മികളെ ഫിൽട്ടർ ചെയ്യാനുള്ള കഴിവ് ഈ വടവൃക്ഷത്തിനുള്ളിടത്തോളം വേറെ ഒന്നുമില്ല.
Sounds like bullshit, right? That's because it is. Sit under any tree with wide foliage and the same is true. The tree produces oxygen through photosynthesis and the shade blocks UV rays. There's no mystical energy. It's just basic science. But in 2004, Sethurama Iyer presented it as though he was revealing something beyond science. This is called cargo cult rationalism. The phenomenon where individuals or organizations mimic the superficial appearance of rational thinking using logic, data, and scientific terminology without adhering to the actual rigorous methodology or objective integrity that makes reason effective. The Almaram scene is the purest example of this. Iyer does not say trees produce oxygen and provide shade. He says it with the authority of a man revealing hidden knowledge, as though the connection between a banyan tree and well-being is mysterious rather than botanical. Though Nerariyan CBI does not pick up the love track, it still has needless comedy, pointless action sequences, and boundless pseudoscience. The rot introduced in Sethurama Iyer CBI takes its boss form here. The case involves a supposedly haunted Taravad. Wait a minute, doesn't this house look familiar? That's right. Plamutil Veedu from Sethurama Iyer CBI with some interior design and deep cleaning becomes Animangalam Taravad. Anyway, the case involves a Tekkini, a dead girl, and supernatural claims that the film eventually debunks. In that sense, the structure is correct. Sethurama Iyer should be the rational force that dismantles the supernatural explanation. And he does, eventually. But on the way there, there's a whole load of pseudoscience that adds no real value to the core plot. The problem with the movie giving time to this pseudoscience is that it gave a certain sense of credibility to things that it should not have. Having seen the rational detective in the first two movies, we, the audience, assume that he would remain rational and not succumb to pseudoscience. That's the real damage of the later CBI films. Not that they were worse, but that they gave credibility to things they should not have. This leads to character erosion. The gradual compromise of a fictional character's defining traits to meet commercial or cultural pressures, until the character remains the name, the appearance, and the mannerisms, but has lost the essence that made them worth watching. The Sethurama Iyer of Nerariyan CBI still has the curry, still clasps his hand behind his back, still has the BGM, still says the right things about logic and evidence, but the scientific temperament that we expect from the character and the story has taken a beating. By the time we reach CBI 5 The Brain in 2022, there's less pseudoscience, but many of the other elements remain. And a new problem has emerged that a critic at Silver Screen India described precisely. The focus is more on his famous mannerisms than on the findings. Jakes Bijoy seems to have got the instruction to play the signature score whenever Iyer gets up and walks, regardless of the situation. That sentence is the diagnosis. The franchise has, by 2022, become primarily a delivery mechanism for Sethurama Iyer's mannerisms. The walk, the BGM, the curry, the look. Everything that once accompanied the detective work is now the point in itself. The mannerisms have outlived the substance that gave them meaning. And now, it seems like the franchise has run its course. So if you ask me, Nerariyan CBI is the worst of the lot. CBI 5 is a little less bad. Sethurama Iyer CBI is better than both, but still represents the beginning of the fall. And there's a vast chasm between these three and the original two films. A chasm that no amount of BGM, no amount of serial murders, and no amount of callbacks can bridge. And in that chasm, we lost the greatest detective in Malayalam cinema fiction.